To get this party started. This party happens to be, for most of you, one of the most fun moments of your day, and for a small number of you, the most terrifying moment of your entire day. We're about to get it started. Text your friends, have them come on in. We'll get this party going in just a few minutes. Woo, woo, woo. Grab that seat before it's too late. Come on in. There's lots up front. We need your energy. Come on, bring it. Come on up. Yeah, come on in. We're going to get it started in just a second. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention. Good afternoon, folks. May I please be the first to congratulate you? You have arrived. Yeah, come on. Give yourself some love. You deserve it, because you're here for the Ignite Talks, the kickoff session. Yes, come on, keep bringing it. Yeah. For the uninitiated, the Ignite Talks are hell. No, I'm just kidding. No. They are a delightful format for presenting information and inspiring audience, for igniting ideas. 20 slides, 5 minutes. Each of those slides auto-advance once every 15 seconds. And you have in your midst 8 extraordinary Ignite speakers. Let's give them some love. They are extraordinary because they have decided that this is a good idea. Amy's like, super did not decide that, actually. Applied for a different track, and now I'm an Ignite speaker. Yeah, that's why we love you. So here's what we're going to do. We want to let them know that even though they are in the jungle, that the jungle is friendly. So I would like you for a moment to summon your best jungle creature. That's right. Okay. And then in a moment, I'm going to ask you to bring it forth. But don't get crazy right off the bat, okay? Let this be a slow build. The first appearance of your inner cat or bird or frog or what have you should be subdued, far off, as if we have just landed here in the jungle, just giving these speakers a hint of what they are stepping into. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's hear it. That was tasteful. Thank you. That was good. This time, can we just bring it with a little bit more juice? So they're really about to step in. This is the moment that they walk from the clearing into the brush with their machete. And you want to let them know that you're here, but you're friendly, loud, aggressive, biting, blood-sucking, but friendly. Okay? 3, 2, 1. All right. Finally, before our first speaker takes the stage, I'm going to ask you to bring that same energy, but this time, bring your body too. Okay? I don't know if it's a mating dance or hunting, but you want to let them know you're here because they're about to take a big risk in front of you, so why not return the favor? 3, 2, 1. Let's see it. Ladies and gentlemen, let the Ignite Talks begin.
Oh, I have the honor of extra time on the stage. Woo! Oh, can you go back? Okay. Hello. Hi. So there are a lot of people out there that are really mad about how often we talk about Harry Potter. Read another book, they say, to which I always respond, who hurt you? They are right about one thing, though, in that simply mentioning Harry Potter is not activism, that's pandering, and we see what you're doing. Actual fan activism draws parallels between pop culture and real-world social issues. And when it's done right, it looks like Harry Potter fans convincing Warner Brothers to change all of their Harry Potter chocolate to fair trade. It looks like Color of Change convincing Disney to reanimate a movie. It looks like over 400,000 books donated and 5 libraries built around the world by Harry Potter fans. Now, the Harry Potter Alliance, which is where I'm from, hello, I'm Janae, nice to meet you. We have been around the block a few times by this point, and there are a few things that we wish people thought about in making fan activism the most effective that it can be. Now, the first is that one of the major pillars of the methodology is capturing public imagination and redirecting that towards social good. Now, that only works if the public is currently imagining it. So the time for a Lord of the Rings campaign was 2002, not now. No matter how much we still deeply love Legolas, and we do. The second is that you need a strong connection to your source material. So it made sense to talk about chocolate sourcing in Harry Potter, where chocolate is basically part of the plot, but maybe not so much in Game of Thrones. I don't even know if they have candy in that world. How to destroy a narrative in 8 seasons, perhaps. Now listen. We know that most of the media we love is being produced by corporate capitalist conglomerates with their own agendas. We get it. Our relationship status with creators is often very complicated. But these stories like Harry Potter and Marvel, Star Wars, and Star Trek, there's not a battle here, They've been reimagined and remixed and reproduced so many times at this point that they've grown beyond their original source material. These stories are the King Arthur tales of our time. So when you go to start a fan activism campaign, you don't start by trying to get Disney or Warner Brothers or the producers or actors involved. You start by finding the fans. Fan activism at its core is grassroots organizing. But listen, there's something very important to note here. Fans will recognize inauthenticity from a mile away. So the minute this is like a cute theme you're gonna use, or a funny shtick, or a way to hook those nerds, you've already lost them. And please, we are begging you, stop writing things in Harry Potter font. It's not a good look. So, what do you do instead? Well, you find the fans, and we don't exactly make ourselves hard to find. Like, that's kind of part of the thing, is announcing that you're into the thing and being like, hi, this is me. So, like, go to a fan convention, read fan fiction, do a deep dive on all of the shipping wars and AUs, and if you don't know what those words mean, congratulations, that's your starting point. And if you don't have the time to do that yourself, or you don't secretly have a staff member on your staff already who's a fan, which seems unlikely, but okay, find an expert to serve as a fan consultant and bring them onto your team the way you would any other consultant. Once you've done those things, it's time to establish where you are in the story. So find what's happening in that narrative that connects to something happening in our world now. For us, we knew that in the 7th Harry Potter book, actually the reason that our heroes spend so much time camping is because they're running from people called Snatchers. Snatchers' job is to find Muggle-borns, capture them, and send them to Azkaban, or wizard prison. And if that sounds familiar to you, it should. That's basically magical ice. So once you've established that, you remind fans, okay, why do we care about this? So it's actually framed as one of the most horrifying things that Harry has to witness, the Muggle-born Registration Commission, where a Muggle-born witch is taken in and interrogated, asked how she stole her magic, and threatened, literally, with being separated from her family. You remind fans that that is happening here in our world right now. And you ask them, what are we going to do about it? And this is the moment that every fan knows, where they sit down together as heroes and they pool their collective knowledge and resources and skills. And this is where your organizational expertise comes in, and they draw a battle plan. For the Harry Potter Alliance, that has been tens of thousands of calls made and letters written, and Harry Potter fans showing up at protests across the nation to try to close the concentration camps currently in this country. Fan activism is not just a cool theme for something that you've already designed. Fan activism is a partnership with communities that are powerful in their own right. Fan activism is a way to connect with people over something they love so much they just can't stop talking about it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Roldan. I am a third-year PhD student at the University of Washington in a department called Human-Centered Design and Engineering. And today I'm here to tell you about something that I'm really proud of, that hasn't been published, that isn't in a journal, that isn't on a poster even, and it's serving the community that served me. So I'm going to tell you about how I've spent my past 2 breaks from grad school back home with my family, with my community, and working with kids. So we've run design workshops with 437 students. I don't know if that number is exact, but we've been doing this in the neighborhoods of Chicago that I grew up in Albany Park and in Mayfair. And it's been with classrooms, so we've worked with close schools, but we've also been working with a library recently. And this work started in Seattle. I saw this happening around the university. I saw these workshops being done, being ran by awesome professors and PhD students. But I wondered, what it might look like to bring it home with the people that I grew up with, and what it might look like to apply that in that context. And so I built a Chicago team, starting with my sister up there and her peers who are in college. And then I reached out to friends that I knew from different organizations, and they reached out to their companies. And then I reached out to my mom and I said, well, we don't have food. Can you cook lunch for us while in between breaks, because we're teaching these programs? And what the students are doing is they're engaging in a fast-paced design activity called a charrette, 60 minutes, where the challenge is design an app that would help a fictional character with their daily life. And I'd done this in Seattle, where children were making SpongeBob find a job, or making, Moana. But in the context of the classrooms that we were working with, students were designing apps for their parents that was looking for a job in the classroom that we were working with. One student designed an app for his grandpa to share his ancestral dances with his community. And so in the first couple times that we started doing this, we saw the students changing the design app challenge for themselves. And it also, to me, I went straight from undergrad to grad school, and I bow down to everyone that's a teacher, but I saw what it looked like to be in the classroom and try to engage students in the design process, and some educators saying, well, your butt should be to the chair, your back to the chair, so what does it mean to actually engage them in this process that I had seen informally in the classroom? And working with educators and librarians, they wanted to start to do this for themselves, and this was originally designed for the students, but what does it mean to sustain this after time? I don't know. And the behind the scenes is I'm shipping these boxes from Seattle to Chicago to get the Post-its there, to get the tablets there, because the library that I'm working with doesn't have that technology yet. And also being flexible. This is what passing periods look like. And now that people are excited about this, they're like, oh, here are all the classes that we've lined down back to back. And I'm like, how do we clean up all the Post-its in between 60-minute sessions? I don't know how to do that. But being flexible with the team that we're working with and the different students that are coming in, and now different community members that want to participate in this work. And this is important because this was a chance to bring my research home. I really struggle with being in grad school and feeling guilty for leaving home. And I get emotional because I don't know how to negotiate that tension. And it's also because I can't not do this. So I've left my community, and now what does it mean to come back and to not stop? This didn't happen when I practiced. And so I don't know how to sustain this, and I have all these questions about students saying, please, I learned how to do teamwork. When are you going to come back? Are you going to interrupt my next science period so that we can have this fun? And I'm like, I don't know if we can interrupt your next science period. And so right now we're just collecting this information informally as the students are kind of saying what their experience are. But I don't know how to sustain this over time, like I mentioned. So what do we do to keep shipping these boxes from Seattle to Chicago? Or how do I partner with people that are there right now? And then also educators want to do this with preschool students. And I don't know what that looks like pedagogically, but how might we support that? And iterating, so as we've seen the students take these challenges and adapt them to their context, what does it mean to lead charrettes in Spanish? What does it mean to, after they leave, they want to tell their parents about it, but how could I don't know, prepare a pamphlet for them to take home? And these are the questions that I'm thinking about, is how might educators take these lessons and apply it to their daily practice? Because I'm seeing this excitement from the librarians and the teacher side, and I just have all these questions. And that's kind of my last 3 slides, is what do I do next? What responsibility do I have, but also what support is there from people in this room? And then this is like, again, something that I've been seeing from the research to practice as a graduate student, is now we need all these barriers and restrictions and tape and forms and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe we could just do this in someone's house. And how might we share these activities? I forgot here. Taking into account, I think this is the slide it's supposed to be about, like all the tensions or the barriers that now I'm starting to face, and trying to figure out how we could skirt them, because I still need and want and will bring these resources back home. And then how might we consider the implications of researchers when these communities are our own? So as you saw here, getting emotional, but then what does it mean to go back home and say, okay, I'm a graduate student with all these resources, but this doesn't exist right here. So thank you, this is my research, and I'm really excited.
Good job. So I'm going to take this little bit of extra time to let you all know that I completed comps recently, which was fantastic. But that means I submitted this slide deck while I was in the middle of my comps, so it might not line up with what I'm going to say today. I also thought I had 30 seconds per slide, but I have 15, so I'm going to talk a little bit faster than I normally would. But I am so excited that I get to talk to you all today about LGBTQ game design discords. That is quite a mouthful, but these spaces are incredibly important to me. So if you think what I'm saying is interesting, please reach out on Twitter at Jeremy Dietmeier. First, why are these places important? So this is a roundabout way, but video games are art. And as art, they convey a sense of what it means to be a person. It conveys a sense of who we are. So in games like God of War, you get this idea of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, what it means to be a hero. And then in games like Donkey Kong 64, you get to know what it's like to be a family person, what it's like to be a hero, what it means to be a gorilla. And so the problem is, though, that these stories all come from the same sources. They typically come from straight, cis, white men. So we need to make these areas more diverse. To help with that, I started the LGBTQ Game Design Jam. The problem is that even though we made some really cool games about being queer, I'm not a game designer by trade. I didn't have the resources they needed, so I turned to Discord. Now, if you're not sure what Discord is, it started off as a voice chat client for gamers, but it then became a social media platform. It's more similar to Slack than it is to Facebook, but it's a place for communities to gather and share resources and talk to one another. Now, I also turned to Discord because I'm very interested in LGBTQ online spaces. We keep telling today's queer youth that it's going to get better, but that kind of ignores the fact that it's really shitty right now. About 60 to 70% of LGBTQ youth get harassed while they're at school. They don't think it's a safe space. So instead, they go to online spaces. That's where they find their communities. Most of these students are saying that their online peers are more supportive and more friendly than their face-to-face peers. So these spaces exist online, but they're not just places to talk about their sexuality. They're very intersectional, so they're going online and they're finding people who are not only queer, but are also people that have the same interests as them. So one of these interests can be coding. So that's why these places are important. They're these intersectional spots where students can go out and find out who they are, do some identity exploration, but at the same time, they can learn new skills. This slide is crap. So this is when I thought this one shouldn't have been submitted, but I'm going to highlight a couple of things. I'm going to highlight community building as well as making things. So one of the most important parts of community building is actually moderators and having guidelines and rules. So you think that you just kind of like police yourself, but that's not enough in these online spaces. You need to know what you can do in this space. Can I swear? Can I talk about my sexuality? Can I post memes? And then queer spaces often bring out the trolls. So within these spaces as well, how can we make sure that the people that aren't supposed to be there aren't there? So that's why you need a very strong moderator team. But you also need to have the moderators there to, as one moderator put it, it's my job to keep the baby gays and the baby developers safe. So when they're in these spaces, the developers are making sure that everybody in there is following the rules, so that when I get pinged at 3 a.m. because somebody decided to ping everybody and my phone goes off, that person gets a warning, and then they get a 24-hour ban, and then they actually get kicked out of the Discord because they kept pinging everybody constantly. So these spaces as well, though, they're not just forums. They're not just spots to ask questions. You can do that at other places like Stack Overflow. They're places to form a community. So the best ones that I was a part of didn't just have spots where they were making games. They had spots where they could chill and hang out and kind of form these third spaces that allowed their students or allowed participants to talk about things that weren't just game design. But they also had to go beyond just community to creating. So within this is stuff, the next few slides are things from the Discord that I'm posting with permission. So they have people who are posting their art. It's very easy to post your art and share it with the world these days. But if you want to make a portfolio, you need to have some of your top work in there. So they post it to the Discord first, where it gets ripped apart, and then they post it again, and then they post it again, each time getting it a little bit better. They're also posting their UIs. This is one that I helped test. They're also making games. So within the Discord that I'm part of, there are 6 games currently in development. Each one has the lead game designer. They have their teams. They're organizing everybody within the Discord together to make games from scratch. So the people are getting their skills, they're sharing with one another, they're becoming experts within their own field. So within these spaces, they're not just serving as a spot for people to learn about their identities, as a place to create badges, as a place to get feedback. they're serving as these spaces where they can come together and form new communities. So the goal is that through spaces like this, that we can have a new area that can connect people from their interests to their skills, and similar to how Mass Effect 3 slowly with each generation got a little bit more okay with their LGBTQ characters and you got to have a little bit more choice in who you loved, so can we in these spaces and the games that we're making. If you're interested in this stuff, please reach out to me. That's my email and Twitter, and thanks, guys.
So tonight, this evening, I want to extol the virtues of being late to the game, of coming to appreciate something in the complicated space between novelty and nostalgia. And in the following slides, I'm going to show a bunch of different media, phenomenon, objects that dwell in this kind of in-between space. But to start out, I have 3 questions. First, what would it look like for education for us to be okay with being late to the game? Put slightly differently, what would a playful pedagogy and ethics of being late to the game look like? And finally, to put it slightly differently again, what would it look like for the production of, for our consumption of pedagogical gadgets, methodologies, platforms to resist a language of the cutting edge and instead embrace belatedness? So in this talk, I'm not interested in rehashing arguments that pit digital innovation against something like slow scholarship, or sorting educators or students into adopter status silos. I want us to think about a different pedagogical space, and I think it's a space most of us actually work in most of the time. And it's the space that I'm calling being late to the game. And it has 4 key features. And the first one is it resists simplistic accounts of tech adoption. So one very famous schema is that you're either an innovator or an early adopter or early majority or late majority, or you're a laggard. And one can easily see how this actively encourages moralistic judgment. That is, like, the laggards drag everybody down. They undo the hard work of the innovators, the early adopters. What this misses, though, is that tech adoption, tech consumption is wrapped up with our aesthetic attachments. So, like, what would we call a 18-year-old freshman in college who gets super into, not the 18-year-old, who gets super into 90s web design because of the Captain Marvel film's official website, which is going to be... There you go. Would that 18-year-old be an early adopter of a nostalgic 90s web design? How would we characterize voices that levy serious critiques against ed tech platforms, even as the same people with those voices we would understand to be early adopters or innovators? Being late to the game allows us to jettison the idea that tech adoption transparently signals some sort of particular virtue. Second, being late to the game reveals the ways our aesthetic attachments refuse to follow preset timeframes. We're always shuttling back and forth between an attraction to the latest thing and a desire for what came before. And we inhabit really complicated, conflicting temporalities. We dwell with really complicated desires. And I think our response to that situation for ourselves, for others, for other educators, for other students, should be patient. Third, it responds critically to design and aesthetics in a hypermediated age. So who gets passionate about a 1989 Ford Taurus? Yeah? No? Hipsters? No? I mean, people may be desiring the latest iPhone, and they may be interested in the first iPhone, but who cares about an iPhone 4? Right? All of this stuff up here has been, objects, media, phenomenon that, frankly, have uninteresting aesthetics. In contrast to this are objects that are, as Sean Nagai puts it, cute or zany, things that attract our attention. And these things can, for a while, have can be crucial cultural commodities. And I've totally lost. So point 4, on to point 4. Being late to the game also reflects on issues of inclusion and exclusion. It's exciting to be on the cutting edge, but we need to perhaps reconsider who we count as being on the cutting edge, and we need to consider the ways in which the kind of following after the next thing means some people are struggling to catch up, to follow the rules, because the rules keep changing on them. And being late to the game means welcoming people into play where clarified, inclusive rules are the norm. So really quickly, by way of conclusion, being late to the game, 4 key features: resists simplistic accounts of tech adoption. Second, reveals how our attachments, our aesthetic attachments, refuse to follow easy timeframes. Third, responds critically to design and aesthetics in a hyper-mediated age. And finally, considers and reflects on inclusion and exclusion. Thank you.
Okay, still waiting for my, yeah, okay. Hi, hello. I'm Nick from Austria. I'll be talking about, this is also on the next slide, so I can take a little time, about the crisis of democracy, the problem with algorithms, the lack of discourse, the truth about reality and fantasy, and the most important thing about humans in 5 minutes or less. So this is a pretty dense story, so I hope you forgive me if I refer to my notes quite often. But let me start by stating the obvious. Democracy is in crisis, and I think most of you will agree about that, and it's in crisis all around the world. Now, the question is, what can this be tied to? It can probably be tied to a lot of things, but one important thing is a blurring of the concept of democracy itself, which is understood less and less as the rule of the people, but as the rule of the majority over the minority. In this situation, core democratic principles like political tolerance, checks and balances, or the rights of minorities are first ridiculed, then discredited, and finally, very often, they are abolished. And in this light, the crisis of democracy is also and mainly a crisis of discourse, a symptom of societies increasingly reluctant to consider the foreign idea, to respect the opposing position, or to listen to the voice of the other. This is closely connected, obviously, to the problem with algorithms, which is not the ability to use large amounts of data to make decisions for us. It is the ease with which this ability is used for comfort and control, as we can hardly imagine these algorithms used in any other way. In the age of filter bubbles and confirmation bias, we zoom in ever more closely on the information we already want, the voices we already know, and the communities we are already part of. This lack of discord is probably the greatest danger to democracy, when society is no longer a variety of different voices, but a collection of well-separated cohorts of opinion, then self-affirmation and an attitude of incomprehension takes the place of democratic discourse as a core practice of social connectedness. It is, however, possible to imagine a different way, using algorithms not to connect us to kindred spirits, like-minded souls, perfect matches, but to confront us with those we disagree with the most, and in this way creating not matches made in heaven, but connections made across the widest possible gap, opportunities for discord, conflict and confrontation, and I'm serious about that ideally provide a chance for learning and for debate. Now, this also leads us to the question of, or actually the truth about reality and fantasy, and that is that we must leave behind the idea that we all share the same reality while our fantasies are our own. Neither part of this idea holds up if you look closely at that. The more we feel connected through modern modern technologies, the more we see that we're living in a multitude of different realities, each made up of the things we decide to agree, to accept, or like. And this individualization of realities is at the core of the crisis of democracy. The good news is we can find this lost connection between us elsewhere, and it is where we have always found it. And this is in the fact that contrary to our realities, it is our fantasies that we can truly share, using an ability that might seem magic, but that is actually deeply human, maybe the most important thing about humans, and this is what Jon Huizinga calls the play element of culture, which can be summarized as the ability to not only create a fantasy world, but to share the fantasy and through common practice and belief make this fantasy reality. This is the way we create and constantly recreate culture, and it is the way we have invented abstract, fantastical ideas like democracy, and made them a reality through practice and dedication. This ability to play out a fantasy with sacred earnest and thereby shape reality together requires more than belief. It requires the willingness to express and listen to foreign ideas, to accommodate those who are strange to us, to hear the voice of the other. This crisis of democracy is a crisis of human connection, and the truest form of human connection, I think, is through play. And in this sense, I think it is high time to play. And with this, I thank you.
Hi, I am really appreciative that this is a forum that brings together practitioners and researchers, and I'm going to myself be an example of a practitioner who is really excited about all of these ideas, but is also struggling with these ideas, and hopefully that will be of benefit to some of you in the audience. So I'm Kelly. I'm from the Santa Monica Public Library. Are there any other public library staff? Woo! So in my position at my library, we do not have a dedicated makerspace. We do not have, I'm running mine. Until just a few years ago, we didn't even have consistent digital literacy programming. So we needed to jump in and start coordinating our efforts. But our day-to-day reality is really dealing with practical concerns and figuring out, how to use the equipment that we've got and how to set up policies for it. So we needed to combine solving a practical concern with some of our strategizing in order to be able to start something and launch something. And one of our practical concerns was that we were having trouble attracting teens. Our Teen Advisory Council expressed a lot of interest in digital literacy programming, in 3D printing, in coding, in other creative applications, but then they would not show up when we would make those opportunities available. And I have plenty of theories about why, but what was interesting was that we were also turning away teen volunteers because apparently we didn't have enough for them to do. And I didn't have enough staff to facilitate digital literacy programming at our library. So I wondered if we couldn't use this to start something. And in order to base our programming on volunteers, we really needed an infrastructure, robust training. We needed to ask for a commitment from them. And in order to ask that much of them, we needed to make sure we were incentivizing their efforts. So we've been doing the Tech Teen program now for 2 years, and it's been a big reason that we've been able to bring programming to our community. Kids coding, adult computer skills, and the community loves it and is benefiting from it. Our hope is that the youth are also benefiting from it. In our community, youth report really high levels of academic expectations and really low levels of meaningful participation in their own learning. And in contrast, in our program, we try to provide examples of success that are social, that are fun, that are authentic in terms of showing the teens the impact they can have on their community. And one thing we definitely see is that they kind of get in touch with themselves and grow in confidence. So we're hopeful that this is a good foundation for some deeper strategizing, specifically related to connected learning, which was part of what inspired me to go in this direction, but that I didn't really fully understand, and now I'm very appreciative of the practitioner's guide that's come out that's given me a strong perspective to reflect in front of all of you so that you can help me clarify anything that I need to clarify. So regarding their interests, they are motivated to learn when they're helping others solve problems. And they have opportunities for creative expression as well, because we encourage them to take on leadership projects and try out their ideas in front of an audience. Regarding relationships, we have the opportunity to really get to know these youth because we're working with them and seeing their strengths and hearing about their interests and helping them find opportunities. And a lot of that is because we have such a structured program. It frees us up to think about the relationships more. But at the same time, that structure, I'm worried, takes away ownership from them because it's something that we started as a foundation, and I want help thinking about that, and I'm not sure how. Regarding opportunities, we are writing letters of recommendation, helping them connect to academic programs, other enrichment programs, even job opportunities. Teens tell us that they feel like they can say legitimately that they have job experience, but I really want to broker for them more exciting opportunities. They're hungry for them, and I don't have the skills to help them further, and I'm struggling to find the right opportunities for them as well. And just one last big thing I'm struggling with is describing the program. I want to call it service learning, and I don't know if I'm allowed to, if that's too context specific. So I hope that anyone who has insight that they want to share or talk about further with me will find me and talk.
Pittsburgh, all right. Hi, everybody. Wow, beautiful room. My name is Marijke Hecht. I am a graduate student at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm hopefully finishing my PhD this spring in learning sciences, so I'm going to carry all your positive energy with me. I am actually trained as a botanist and a naturalist. I did environmental education for years. So part of what I've been thinking about a lot since I've delved into this educational research is the ways in which we might think about how we adaptively manage biological ecosystems and how that could really inform the way we think about learning ecosystems. Right now, I see a lot of people talking about learning ecosystems like this. The learner's at the center. This idea is like the learner's surrounded by relationships and policy and environments, but what's really at the center of learning? So I spent the summer actually in the field with teenagers outside, which is exactly where I like to be. And it got me thinking, what's at the center here? Is it the young man who's hoping to touch a daddy long legs for the first time? Is it the educator who's passing him the daddy long legs? Is it actually the daddy long legs itself? See, in an ecosystem, there is no center. Restoration ecologists think about assemblages over individuals. They think about relational processes over simple subject-object interconnectedness. So these seem like two big insights that we could carry into how we think about learning ecosystems. Take these trees. These are aspens in Utah. It looks like a bunch of individual trees. This is actually 47,000 trees, all connected by a single root system covering 107 acres. There are no individuals here. And even this huge organism cannot thrive without these tiny fungi, these microscopic fungi called mycorrhizae that actually move nutrients and water from soil to roots. So are there even individual species? What about humans? Are we actually separate from the hundreds of microbes that live in our guts? Are all of us in this room separate from one another? Are there any individuals here? We can't survive apart from all the entangled elements of an ecosystem. This is more than just a bunch of connected parts, right? There's a flow of nutrients, water, energy that are in constant flux throughout an ecosystem. So now you're maybe thinking, well, that's fine, those are natural systems, but I study learning, I care about kids. I've got to center them because we don't want to lose individuals in dysfunctional systems. But what happens when we're centering youth? How does that shape the way that we think about equity, for example? So here, we're imagining youth moving through the system, and then we pose the problem as, okay, do youth have access to the same opportunities? But I think when we focus on those individuals, we're actually undermining the potency of the learning ecosystem frame. We're losing the forest for the trees. So what would happen if we rethought how we design and conceptualize learning ecosystems, bringing in these ideas from the adaptive management of biological systems? So here, restoration ecologists use indicators like the mayfly. They use this to measure the health of the system. But they don't design stream restoration projects specifically for mayfly habitat. They look beyond the mayfly to what's influencing the mayfly habitat. Things like beavers, which are keystones. They drive energy flows through the system. And very importantly, they're always focused on localizing their efforts. They might adapt ideas from other locations, but they never use straight replication. They bring in ideas about resources and how those are influencing things, but they're also designing thinking about natural disturbances like flooding. So we know these things are inevitable. We're always going to have floods. How can we design a system that can actually thrive and be resilient in the face of this kind of disturbance? So what if we thought about youth as our indicators? Their learning is definitely a great measure of ecosystem health. But what if we designed our interventions around keystones like educators? And what if we always designed with variation and local context rather than replication? And what if we embrace natural disturbances? We know changes in funding, changes in policy, they're always coming down the line. So how do we create systems that don't just withstand that impact, but actually thrive in the face of it? So just like the aspens, there is no individual learning. We all are intimately connected. And when we focus on individual access, we lose sight of the power of that learning ecosystem metaphor. If we want to focus on the ecosystem, we have to decenter children and youth. Why not create structures that support a holistic learning ecosystem, like support systems for out-of-school educators as pathway brokers, which is something we've heard about here today. So just like the aspen and the mycorrhizae, youth, educators, place, we thrive and fail together. Let's decenter youth and think about the ecosystem overall. Thank you.
Okay, I'm the last one. Hang in there. Here we go. I'll bring it home for us. I'm Amy Hutchison from George Mason University in the Washington, D.C. Metro. And I am here today to talk to you about Chloe that you see here on your screen. As you can see, Chloe is engaged in an activity that involves lots of pieces and an iPad. And what she is in fact doing is building a programmable unicorn robot. Yes, that is a thing. So you can see from this picture that she is very engaged in this activity. But what you can't see in this picture is that Chloe has autism spectrum disorder, or autism. So you may at this point be thinking, oh, that makes sense. People with autism are really good at computers and coding. That might be true for some people with autism, like it might be true for some people without autism, but it's not true for Chloe. You see these two pieces on the side of your screen here. Those are supposed to look exactly alike. Clearly they do not. It took 12 tries to get those right. This is really challenging work for Chloe. And that's because it involves some complex computational thinking skills. Computational thinking skills are necessary for learning all kinds of things. They're also really important for becoming good at coding. And together, computational thinking and coding are important because they help us be better consumers of information. They help us to be better producers of information. They help us to participate better in a digital society, which is why I think that everyone, including students with disabilities, should have the opportunity to learn computational thinking and coding. Yet, students with disabilities are being completely left out of the computer science movement in most cases. Sometimes we see privilege being given to students in gifted classrooms, for example. A lot of scholars are now calling coding a new literacy skill and argue that in the near future, if one does not have coding literacy skills, then one is not fully literate because coding is becoming a dominant form of communication. Therefore, we have to think really critically and carefully about who we include in this computer science movement. And as I said before, so far, students with disabilities are being left out. But fortunately, I get to lead a project funded by the National Science Foundation that is aimed at helping elementary teachers teach computer science to students with disabilities. It's not a small ask. We're doing this through design-based intervention research, robust model of professional development, and universal design for learning. So in design-based intervention research, you implement an intervention, you reflect on your data, and you revise the intervention, and you keep doing it over and over again in short cycles until you reach a desired pedagogical goal. This has turned out to be really good for us, that we get lots of do-overs because there's not a clear answer about how to do this, and we're actually messing it up quite a lot, so we're requiring a lot of cycles. Universal Design for Learning is a framework for designing flexible instruction to accommodate the needs of individual learners. So together, through design-based research and Universal Design for Learning, we're slowly making progress toward our goal of including students with disabilities in computer science. It sounds good, right? Well, it is a good idea, but as I said, we're actually failing a lot, and we're finding out from this project that more than anything, we recognize that to create this kind of equity that we want to see, we have to go far beyond just being advocates for this group of students. We have to take action on our beliefs, but we have to be really persistent in taking action on our beliefs and try again every time we fail. So I want to challenge you today that whatever you think about, study, whatever your realm of influence is, that you go beyond just being an advocate for the thing and beyond just taking some action, but that you be a really persistent action taker. This topic came up for me because Chloe is my daughter, and I also have an autistic son. And I recognize that kids like them are being left out of a lot of the conversations around computer science. And to be completely honest, I kind of understood why. I really didn't imagine that Chloe would ever be able to program this robot. But through a lot of really persistent work on her part and a lot of patience and persistent work on my part, we made it there, and Chloe has begun to program her robot. So I want to leave you with this. People with disabilities have the right to learn computer science so that they can be fully literate and that they can participate in a society in which coding is a necessary literacy skill or will become one. And to create the equity we want to see, we have to be not just advocates, but also persistent action takers. So whatever it is that you do, be an action taker and not an action faker. You should Google that because it's really funny.
Please join me in thanking all of our Ignite speakers. Woo! So good. And don't forget that you will have another opportunity to be fired up by a set of Ignite speakers who will be speaking on Saturday emceed by Kim Jackson. And in the meantime, we want to encourage you to walk through that wall to the tech demos and give those people some love. Know that outside of this wall, which you can also walk through, will be some libations at 6 o'clock, ending promptly at 7. And we hope you'll stay and partake. Thank you all.